Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 6, 2022, and this regular City Council meeting at Sandpoint City Council is now called to order in Council Chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I'm Mayor Shelby Ronstadt presiding. Also present are Councilors Kate McAllister, Deb Rule, Joel Espiro, Andy Grote, Jason Welker, and Justin Dick. First time we've had full attendance in a while. We'll now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any announcements from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Councilman Welker.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you. There's no place I'd rather be spending it than right here with you all. And if I break into my birthday Butterfinger in the middle of the meeting, it's because I'm missing my birthday cake tonight. Mr. Mayor, I would like to just acknowledge the Lions Club, the Sandpoint Lions Club, for the outstanding parade and fireworks show that they put on the 4th of July. I was lucky to be driving the Ponderay Peddlers truck in the parade with about 30 kids on bikes, and it was a real blast. It was some of the biggest crowds I've seen at a 4th of July event here. So thanks to the Lions Club. As always, they put on a great event.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so with that, the thank you should also go out to our fire department and our police department. This is a lot of extra work that they do for our community, keeping us safe. I think it was pretty uneventful for the most of us, so hopefully they all just were able to sit around and enjoy 4th of July like the rest of us. So a great deal of gratitude to them.
All right, well said. Any announcements from staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a couple tonight. We have a construction project occurring this week with a partial street closure on Great Northern for repairs there. So hopefully everyone saw our announcement, and Great Northern will be in much better condition here shortly. Next week, we've got, there is another street closure along North Boyer at Baldy, and we will have a street closure there Monday through Wednesday of next week, and that is for work that the railroad is doing some repair there at that railroad intersection. As Councilman Grote mentioned, the 4th of July was uneventful for us for the most part, particularly from a public safety standpoint. We were very busy this weekend down at City Beach, and in debriefing it on Tuesday, we had much discussion that in many ways our 4th and the crowds that come with the 4th ended up being on our Saturday as opposed to our Monday. But thank you to the Lions Club for a great celebration down there, and doing it. We put them this year at their request. What we worked through is their setup was all in that Hammerhead area that we have next to the Snack Shack, Marcia Snack Shack, and that worked out really well from ingress egress traffic standpoint at the park, much better than in the past where we've had kind of more conflicts with people coming and going. In terms of upcoming special events, we're in the process of finalizing the permit for JC's race. That will be held on the community trail this weekend on Sunday. Next week will be the start of the summer series, the free concerts in Farm and Park. That will be next Thursday. The 14th will be the first of those, although Rob and Maddox Farm participated and partnered with the Chamber of Commerce in Summer Sampler last week as well. And then there will also next Saturday, we are permitting a street closure on Oak. That will be west of 5th Avenue, adjacent to kind of where Matchwood is, and the about 2 blocks right there, and that will be associated with they're holding a pride event there on Saturday, which normally we wouldn't permit because that's on private property, but we've got a street closure associated with that particular event for crowd management purposes. So that's what I have for updates.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. And I'd like to announce that following the retirement of Tom Albertson, the Lake Pend Oreille School District has a new superintendent, Becky Meyer, who's with us today. And I would like to, first of all, congratulate you on your new position and welcome you here. And if you'd like to come to the podium and say a few words, I'd love to give you that opportunity.
I won't use a lot of time. I know you're all busy. This is my second day on the job, so I'm super excited. I did meet with the city administrator and Chief Kuhn several weeks ago, and I want to start coming to the city council meetings, working collaboratively on projects, future growth. You know, our student enrollment is increasing, so just we had a great conversation and we hope to have a collaborative relationship. If you saw the article in the paper, school safety is really important to me and obviously parents in the community. So I am having my first district safety task force team meeting next week. Chief Kuhn and then one of the other officers will be joining us. And we're going to work collaboratively with people in the community. We have parents, sheriff, and Chief Kuhn and I have worked together for a lot of years. So looking forward to that. And then also starting a 5-year strategic plan. It expired this year, so we'll be doing that, getting a lot of community input, and we're going to actually have community forums. So I'll have one in Sandpoint, one down in Sagal, one up in Clark Fork, where community can actually come in person and give feedback. So just want to make sure everyone knows I'm going to work. I'm not into social media personally, but I did start an Instagram account for our school district yesterday on 4th of July and did my first post. So I will be sharing things out that way, and it's linked to the Facebook and all that stuff. So I just like to work face to face more often. And nowadays, I think it's great if people actually look at each other in the eye. So if anybody wants to meet with me or I'd like to have more of a face-to-face conversation versus things that go over social media. Sometimes, as you all know, as elected officials aren't necessarily always factual. So I'm open door, meet people face-to-face as often as possible. And again, community input forums so that people have a voice in person is really what I hope to continue with. So brief, but I'm happy to answer questions or meet with any of you individually in the future if you'd like. So thank you very much for your welcome, and I'm happy to be back home again. So
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Appreciate it. And lastly, I would like to let the public know that there will be a special joint meeting next Tuesday at 5:30 right here at Council Chambers, where the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with the City Council here, will hear a report from Leland Consulting, which the city had contracted to help us get some good perspective on how to manage this growth that we're experiencing going forward. So we contracted Leland to help us conduct a land use study. So they're using both growth projections along with the economic analysis and land use analysis to help us determine how we can make the best and most efficient use of our limited land resources and make wise decisions in terms of land use policy going forward. So I'd invite anyone from the public to come here and participate in that meeting. Leland will not be taking any questions from the public, but it is a great opportunity for you to hear the report firsthand. And of course, like all of our meetings, you can access the link online and participate remotely as well. So with that, we will now open up the public forum portion of the meeting, which allows the public the opportunity to address myself and council regarding items either listed on the consent calendar or on any item not listed on the agenda. Those here in chambers who wish to speak will need to complete a sign-up form, which is located by the front door there on the table. And please fill it out, of course, and hand it to the clerk here up front. If you are on Zoom and wish to speak, you'll need to raise your hand. Of course, comments shall not be personally derogatory, nor shall they be personally directed at any individual organization or business. Public comment opportunities during meetings are for comments only. Do not direct any questions to council or staff, please, and please do not approach the dais. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak during the public forum this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Janine Shepherd.
All right. Ms. Shepherd, please take the podium.
Janine Shepherd, Bonner County. Just came today to pray for you guys, pray for your meeting, and just want to bless you if you'd pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today and first to praise you and thank you for all you have done for us in our community. You are a good Father. I lift up the mayor and council members to you today, and I want to pray for them personally. First, for their health. We pray for vitality and good health. We pray that any sickness, inflammation, disease would leave in Jesus' name. We call their bodies healed and whole in your sweet name. Next, Lord, we ask that their family relationships would be strong, that their families would look to you for their provision and blessing, seeking you first in their lives. We ask that you help them all to show your grace in every situation, showing your love as they go throughout their days. Last, we pray for our city, Lord, that our city would be known for its love for you. We pray for revival to wash over our city and that people would turn to you and seek your face. We pray that the culture of our city would be one of kindness and that people would know of your love because of us. We ask that you cover our city with your hand and put a hedge of protection around us. Please bless this meeting, bring forth your perfect will, bless the mayor and the council members, and give them wisdom that comes from you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk, anyone else?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And there's no one online that is raising their hand. Thank you. That concludes the public forum portion of the meeting this evening, and we'll now proceed to the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $377,730.92 for regular payables. Are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion that the consent calendar be approved.
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Sparrow,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister. Yes. Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Grow.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is a consideration of an opportunity for the city to participate in a program operated by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare that may provide some utility bill payment assistance for many of our utility customers. Now I yield the floor to our Utilities Director, Greg Lanning. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. That was a great description. This item is a program through the Department of Health and Welfare for low-income home water assistance. In your packets, there's a little bit of a flyer and a fact sheet and a contract. So some good information and background. That too. In addition, we have a member of the Department of Health and Welfare, and she'll do most of the speaking tonight. But I just wanted to describe a couple of things. This program that you'll probably hear from her as well is handed down from the federal program to assist those with paying their water and sewer bills that qualify for households and individuals. There's 3 terms in the contract. You'll see the contract itself is between the Department of Health and Welfare, the State Department, and the city. They call the city the vendor. That is, we're the ones that provide water and bill for water and sewer. But in between that's also a local community action agency or a direct service provider. And they do all the legwork to find those that qualify and send them to us. And then at that time, they just simply help pay the bill for water and sewer. So it really it's not much of a burden at all on us in particular. It's just simply a way of paying bills that are not otherwise paid. With that, I'll introduce you to Danielle Howe, if she can hear us, with the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, and she'll describe the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I was having a couple of video issues, so I apologize for not showing my face in your meeting. And can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the LIWAP program is funded for the state of Idaho, at nearly $5.75 million. And it began October 1st of 2021, and it's scheduled to run September 30th of 2023. At this point, it's just a temporary program, but they've been talking about making it a long-term permanent program, sort of like the Energy Assistance Program, which is the LIHEAP. So as soon as we hear if it is going to be permanent, we will be letting everyone know. Right now, the LIWAP program, we have 125 vendors from all across the state of Idaho, anywhere from a little city of Stites, Idaho, with about 190 people in there, to Suez Water, which has like 56,000 customers, I believe. So we definitely have a wide variety of vendors that have signed this agreement, and it's been very helpful. When we did bring this forward, it was a one-time payment. We are trying to update our state plan and get it approved federally for there to be multiple payments if possible. But right now it's a one-time payment, and it is to help restore services for people who've been disconnected, payment of any past due balances, or payment of current bills if you're struggling to pay this month's bill. So it's a very helpful program to a lot of customers that we serve currently. You guys have any questions about it?
Any questions from council? No questions for you at this time.
And like they were saying at the beginning, it's very minimal what the city would have to do in terms of their like administrative piece. The community action agencies are the ones that determine if a customer is eligible for the program, and they would just have to provide a copy of their bill, and then the payment goes directly to the city of Sandpoint. And so the only time that the community action agency would contact the city is if we need to determine a breakdown of the bills, if there's trash or recycling that's included with water and sewer. If it's not bundled together and it's easily broken down, then it shouldn't be an issue. So it's been a pretty good program so far.
That's great. Yeah, go ahead.
Jennifer, is this going to be an additional, do we have the bandwidth that we can handle this program?
Yes, we did an assessment with our utilities billing. And yes, we believe we have the bandwidth, particularly because most of the work is with a third-party vendor.
Right.
And so it's them paying bills, us reimbursing. So yes.
Okay. And then I have a question for, I'm sorry, her name's Danielle.
Yes.
Danielle, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I read that there was a $1,500 maximum per year. And so CAP does all of the investigative work to make sure they qualify, because I'm sure that if they qualify for other programs within that realm. So how often do they check qualifications? Say, a family starts to make more money, will it stop immediately for them, or will they wait till they expend their $1,500 maximum?
So that's a great question. So basically right now, the maximum payment is $1,500. So if a customer were to come into CAP needing assistance and their bill is $1,300, and it's $200 for the current month and, $1,100 from their past due balance, CAP would pay $1,300 because it's under that $1,500 max. It's a one-time payment, and so it's based off of that customer coming in if they're eligible at the time of application.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Yeah.
So who decides whether this is this contract ends in 2023 or continues forever? Is that the city decides that, or?
Yes, it would have to come back to city
Okay.
council at that time.
Thank you.
And we still haven't gotten any sort of indication if the federal government, because it came from the federal government from ARPA and the Consolidated Appropriations Act is where the funding came from. And so if the federal government, the legislature decides to have this as an ongoing program, then it would go beyond 2023. But at that point, we would then send out new vendor agreements and see who would like to continue on being a vendor.
Thank you, Danielle. Any other questions?
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just for clarification too, it may help. As Danielle mentioned, it is funded with federal ARPA funds. And in this case, we are not a grant recipient like in other cases where ARPA funds are awarded to the city and we're able to use them for projects to offset revenue loss and things like this. Under this agreement, we are completely a vendor. So the grant recipient, if you will, would be the citizen who receives the support through the program. We're just receiving payment on the citizen's behalf. So it's a payee, payor relationship with the city.
Thank you. Is that it for your presentation, Danielle?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this issue? Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the low-income home water assistance program vendor agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? So be a roll call vote.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Sparrow,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister.
Yes.
And the motion is approved. The first item under old business is consideration of a contract award for Phase 1 of the Traverse Park renovations project. I'll now yield the floor to City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of the overview on this item, and Maeve's going to help fill out any details and if there are specific questions. And we also have a representative of Emmerich Construction in the room, and I'll have Corey come up as part of this. And Art Thatcher, another consultant we're working with, is participating online as well. So he'll speak for a couple of minutes. What you have before you tonight is consideration to award a contract to Emmerich Construction Company for Traverse Park renovations Phase 1. A reminder to council and the public that this is a design build project at Traverse Park, which includes the design and full build out of a functionally complete multi-use indoor sports complex with an emphasis on tennis and pickleball. It's a multi-use facility, much like what we did at War Memorial Field, where we have painting lines and we have a facility that accommodates baseball, softball, lacrosse, soccer, as well as football with a community our size, and being able to have an affordable facility that benefits the most residents. Multifunctional facilities are one way we are able to do that. This project also includes associated site improvements, which is construction, design and construction of a gateway plaza trailhead at the entrance to the sports facility, as well as adjacent to our skate park. Our skate park will undergo an expansion to an all-wheel skate park with an integrated bike skills facility. And as a component of our RFP, an important part of this project is to consider phased donor opportunities into the design of the project for future build out, for donors that may come in as we are underway with design and construction of the project. A reminder that this is an artistic conceptual drawing, which Maeve did originally when we were working with the Russell family on the donation for this project, and to get some sense of what this would look like. And so again, this is a design build project. So this design is not a final design like traditionally we do in a traditional approach where we have a design and then we're going out for construction of that design. This is a conceptual rendering. So we will be with council approval tonight going into a design process over the next 6 to 8 weeks to get a design finalized that accomplishes all of the things that were included in the RFP approved by council. A reminder about this project: this is a wonderful public example of a public-private partnership that is only made possible because of some significant donations that have been made to the city of Sandpoint. And really, we consider all of the individuals and organizations on these next 3 slides are ongoing partners in this process. Jim and Jenny Russell are here again with us tonight. They are the donors for the James E. Russell Sports Complex, so the building facility as well as the associated gateway. They made the contribution to the city, which council accepted back in March, and so we do have the funds in hand to construct this facility. A second set of donors, a wonderful couple from our area, live in Sago, retired veterinarians, both of them. Ann Hargis and her husband, Denny Liggett, also made a substantial contribution to the gateway to be constructed at this site of 2 bronze pieces through the artist Georgia Gerber, one being the black bear you see on the left, the one on the right being the cougar and the cub. And they were inspired in choosing these 2 drawings with the story of the Russell family. Again, Jim Russell, one of his childhood friends growing up was Patrick McManus, who wrote a series of very funny, entertaining books about adventures of family and kids growing up in this area. And one of those title characters is in the book is actually based on Jim Russell. So when we shared that story with Ann and Denny, that kind of inspired in a couple of those stories choosing these bronze pieces. So they are currently commissioned and underway and will be completed next year in time for placement at the facility. And then finally, last but certainly not least, the Bonner County Skate Park Association has been actively raising funds and partnering with us on the expansion of the skate park. This has been a long time dream of theirs, and they continue fundraising for this. And again, another reason why we included that phased components as well as donor recognition be a part of this facility. I know they're talking with a couple other donors now who may come in, and this may be even a larger project for the skate park or other components as we get moving forward. So finally, in terms of where we are with process, we received a proposal, a single proposal from Emmerich Construction in response to our RFP. We had a number of firms that participated in our pre-construction meeting. Ultimately, we received one responsive proposal. Following receipt of the proposal and a full review by multiple city staff, we met with Emmerich Construction, and as included in their proposal, they indicated that fine-tuning their pricing would be based on completing a risk assessment. That risk assessment was completed in the last couple of weeks, which included a geotechnical analysis of the ground conditions at the site, as that can be an unknown for those who have been down at the site and are tennis facility, the courts that were going to be replaced by this new building facility. We have a bird bath, is what you call it, Maeve, in the middle. And we have a failure of the tennis courts at that facility. When they did their geotechnical drilling, what the findings were, which was a positive finding because it can be dealt with and isn't a huge risk, is we had about 10 feet of decomposing wood underneath the tennis courts. That's why you're seeing the failure. But that can easily be dealt with cleaning that out and building in a solid surface for this to be constructed on. We received, following the risk assessment, a best and final offer on June 21st. This final offer was within budget and on schedule. We did a full meeting review and negotiation with Emmerich and discussed their overall team for this project. Emmerich is the principal for this project and will also be responsible for the construction. They are partnering with ALSC Architects out of Spokane on the design elements, and they also have with them another landscape architect who will be part of this. ALSC has extensive experience in building buildings and facilities like is proposed here. They have done a number of YMCA facilities throughout the region, a number of the college recreation centers around the area, as well as some of the other municipal and county recreation facilities throughout the whole region. So they have extensive experience with projects like ours, which we felt was extremely important because they would have lessons learned around about flow and design and use of a facility that would be very important as we are moving through this in final design. And finally, a key partner of the design build team is also Dreamland Skatepark. Dreamland is very familiar with Sandpoint. They did the kidney bowl that we have at the skate park now. They did a significant replacement of that bowl last year. And our skating community is very familiar with Dreamland and very comfortable with them as a partner in this project. Anything I'm missing on that? Okay. We have been, we received a validation schedule, so that was part of the risk assessment. Again, we have a pretty aggressive timeline with this project. When we went out with the RFP, our timeline proposed for this project was that we have a completion in October of 2023 as part of the risk assessment and finalizing and validating the overall design build team. Emmerich came back with a validation schedule over the next 3 months, which includes moving really pretty quickly with design. There will be opportunity as we get to final design for that to be out, the public a chance to see that before it's finalized. But this isn't a project, again, it's design build where it is designing and building a project to achieve the objectives and the outcomes that are designed in our RFP. This isn't a full redesign that we're out revisiting this from square one. It's completing what is in our RFP that hit the streets. With that, I want to ask Corey Lohman, who is the president of Emmerich, if he wants to make any comments on approach, process, or anything else related to the design build team, or answer any questions relative to generally a design build approach if council has any of those.
Good evening. Thanks, Jennifer, Maeve, Mr. Mayor, council members, community, and the Russell family, of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce our firm and myself. We're an 80-year-old construction company with headquarters in Tualatin, Oregon. We've been working in Idaho and the area for the last 40 years. I'm very proud to be our 5th president in our last 80 years. We've recently opened what we're calling a forward operating base. Many would call it a satellite office here in Sandpoint, and have been relocating resources and key individuals into the area so that we can start building Sandpoint community and the 7B area, and making this our home as well. So we're excited to be a part of it, and of course, the opportunity to help make the city and the Russell family's dreams become a reality for our very first project here in the community is an absolute honor. And we just look forward to making that happen for you. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have of me or our company. But otherwise, we just thank you very much for your trust.
Thank you. Council, any questions at this point? No? All right, thank you. Appreciate
you.
that, Corey.
Cheers.
Thank you, Gordon. And finally, there's been questions on what our approach will be related to considering operations planning, overall management moving forward, maintenance for the facility. And we have entered into a separate contract with a firm by the name of Barry Dunn. Barry Dunn actually acquired Greenplay about a year ago, and council will be familiar with Greenplay. They were our consultant who actually worked with us in the community to develop our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We went back to them after they had been acquired by Barry Dunn and asked them to come back on and assist us with both oversight of the design build process as a part of the city team. In this particular project, Maeve is functioning as our project manager. So she's boots hits the ground, our manager overall and liaison in this project with the design build team on behalf of the city team. I'm functioning as our project director, but again, primary on decision making and coordination is Maeve, but Barry Dunn will also be part of our city team in reviewing and validating plans. And ultimately, they will be assisting the city in developing a staffing operations and management plan specific for the James E. Russell Sports Center. This will include a 5-year business plan, operational pro forma, and they will be coordinating with the design team. So they will be looking at rates, they will be looking at staffing, they will be looking at scheduling. So when are we scheduling pickleball versus tennis, and how are we doing that again to maximize community participation in this facility? They will be looking and assisting us in developing a rate structure that is sustainable, that supports the facility, but also makes it available to the community to be able to use, and are planning ultimately for maintenance in the short term and the long term for the facility. As part of these efforts, there will be some community engagement and partner facilitation components. So as we look at designing a schedule for the facility, we're designing fee structures, looking at who might use the facility, when they most want to use the facility. Much of the process that we went through with War Memorial Field and determining how we were going to handle the scheduling, what months of the year, and those kinds of things. But this will be an even deeper dive into this process. And Art Thatcher is participating electronically via the East Coast tonight. So thank you for staying with us so late tonight, Art. He will be leading this effort with Barry Dunn, and Art is a extremely experienced consultant and expert in this area. One of the questions that has been brought up in community discussions and some concern about the facility is if we have a tennis court and it's painted with pickleball lines, then can our high school team play on it? Can it be used for games? Could it be used for conference types of games? Is it eligible with pickleball lines on there? Art assures us it is, and is here to kind of address some of those concerns with a facility too, and working with the community in that regard. So when we contacted Barry Dunn about coming in and participating in this effort, in true disclosure, we actually went through all of the staffing background and specifically called in and said, we would really like Art to be leading this effort and part of our team. So we're really thrilled. And with that, I want to give Art a couple of minutes too to kind of answer any questions and address their approach as well from Barry Dunn.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And good evening from the state of Virginia. I appreciate the opportunity to come and kind of speak with you generally about where we are operationally and kind of looking at moving forward. We are, very excited for this opportunity. We had a great relationship with the community as we developed the master plan for the Parks and Recreation Department, and we look to continue that. We've been engaged in several kind of pre-meetings leading up to this point, and so very excited about where the park is going, where the facility is going, and what the community and the donors are looking at. As we work with communities around the country, we really realize that similar to, what used to be a football field is now, home to football, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. So multi-purpose and multi-use is very beneficial to communities as we look at those uses around the country. We can, scheduling and looking at, what are those kind of really peak times for individual sports is how we can kind of utilize that. When pickleball first got started and really became super popular, the USTA, kind of really had a hard stance of they would not sanction a tennis tournament if it had alternative sport lines on the court. And now they've realized that pickleball is not going away, and they are very willing to sanction tournaments that do have alternative lines on the courts. It's very similar to basketball and volleyball being lined on the same courts. In many cases you have a single competitive volleyball court that runs the same way as the baskets run, and then you also have two practice courts that run on the half court. So, by coloration and by, those dashed lines and those distinctions, it's very easy to distinguish between the two sports. And so the same is, happens with pickleball and volleyball, pickleball and tennis, as we, as we see it emerging around the country. So we're very excited to work with both the pickleball community as well as the tennis community as we begin to kind of develop this operational, look at the facility and how it will be maximized and most efficiently used. And then as we begin to develop those things, we'll look at staffing and kind of management models that we can use, as well as kind of providing some operational and business planning for those facilities. So I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. Just very briefly, I spent 30 years as a Parks and Recreation administrator in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia, and actually in 1998, my tennis pro at my tennis facility, which operated 8 months out of the year, the other 4 months he went down to Florida, came back and had this game that he really wanted to introduce in Virginia, which was called pickleball. And so we started playing pickleball in Hampton, Virginia back in 1998 and 1999. And so we've been integrating that, for multiple years here in Virginia. And so it is very possible. And we do see not only the transition of older athletes moving into the pickleball realm, but of younger athletes. And we see it very, very, very generally used in elementary school and middle school physical education classes to maximize the number of students who can participate at one time in a racket sport. So I'll stop talking and be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Mr. Thatcher?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Hi, Art, thank you very much for taking the time to explain some of this stuff to us. You did a very good job of explaining the complexities of the scheduling and also trying to satisfy the mixed use needs as we move forward. We have a very we have many interesting communities here in Sandpoint, which is not unique. I really look at this as a way for our community to be steered and directed into a way to figure out how to get along for a common need and a common desire. I think that's important in this time while I'm here, as well as big of a statement that might be. The bigger statement is for me is to make sure that the Russell family's vision is the first filter in which all decisions go through. It does appear that there are going to be many, for lack of a better expression, cooks in the kitchen in this one. However, the Russell family's vision, I think, is the utmost imperative of all of this. So this is a request for me as a council member to, as you move forward, to help us, as well as to maybe hopefully gently remind our community that that is why we're here having this conversation.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. I mean, I agree with you 100%. You know, if you kind of look at the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that's really developed and built around the mission and vision of the department and the city. And I believe that, you know, that by developing this, this facility, also using that vision, as you indicated, as the guiding principle, I believe is, you know, is the best way to go and really sets the stage for how we move forward and how we make it very successful.
All right, any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Thatcher. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Is that it?
With that, the last comment that I will make, Mayor, there have been questions that we've already received from the public. Anytime we are replacing or refurbishing a facility that we have, it has interim impacts on use of that facility, and this absolutely will. As we move forward through this process and really narrow down what our timelines are going to be and what those impacts are, we will be reaching out to the communities that use our current outdoor tennis courts, including the high school tennis team, and working with them to figure out alternate locations when there are going to be impacts on seasons, and with our other facilities, and even partnering with others in the area. And that's, again, with Art on our team, that's what he brings, is really trying to help us problem solve through some of those issues we're going to run into. But a reminder that when we built War Memorial Field, we also impacted fall sports for the high school as well with the construction of that. So we believe we have a design build team that is going to move through this project as quickly as any design build team possibly could. We're really confident that the community will see ultimately what was envisioned in our master plans with the team that we're presenting to council for your consideration tonight. And we are asking for approval to award the contract to Emmerich Construction.
Thank you, Jennifer. Council, last chance for questions. All right, good presentation. Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Tish Litvin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've never spoken at one of these gatherings before. I have nothing scripted or written, but as a community member in the city of Sandpoint, I've lived here for 20 years. I'm a retired school teacher from the Lake Pend Oreille School District, and I'm an avid tennis player as well as an avid pickleball player. I'm a very competitive tennis player. I ran the Park and Rec tennis program for 5 years. It was very successful during that time, and I'm proud of what I put into that program and the results that I saw. The results from that program overflowed into middle school tennis, into high school tennis, into a lifelong sport of tennis. The contribution and the gift that the Russell family has made to our city is beyond words. It's going to be something that every member of the community will hopefully embrace and enjoy and appreciate for years to come. My comment is, in the process of constructing this sports complex, we're losing 4 tennis courts that are a vital part to our community of tennis players. We're losing those courts, period. They're not going to be replaced at this point, to my understanding, in the time that it's going to take to build this complex. We're the only sport that loses in the building of this complex. Pickleball games, skateboard park games, any other sport that is included in this complex gains. Tennis loses 4 courts, dedicated tennis courts that aren't shared, that run the high school program, that run the middle school program, that have a vital tennis camp, that serve as our venue for our summer adult league. And it's a shame that that's happening to a sport that's a lifelong sport. So it's my hope that in the construction of this tennis complex, that we do work together and we decide what works best for the sports that are involved, and that tennis isn't given the short end of the stick in this case. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the future with tennis in Sandpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lippman, for those comments. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk?
Amelia Boyd.
Good evening, Amelia Boyd. I'm a city resident. I just want to thank the Russell family personally as a community member. And we're extremely appreciative of this gift, what you're giving to the town of Sandpoint and to the children and the multiple families that are going to benefit from this. As a community member, I just really wanted to look you in the face and just say thank you. And to council, I appreciate you in the due diligence you do in researching this project, and of course, city staff for doing all the legwork. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk?
No others, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no one online?
No.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the agreement with Emmerich Construction Company for the Trevor's Park renovations Phase 1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Then moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I just want to say once more on behalf of this body and the city of Sandpoint, again, thank you to the Russell family for this gift. And I think we're all very excited to see what it will hold for the future of athletics at Sandpoint. So especially during those long, dark, cold winters.
And
Thank
we're
you
not
so
going to
much.
cry this time.
Well.
We're going to be good. You might.
I might cry.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Rule,
I'd like to also look you in the eye. And thank you very much. Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor Dick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda are 2 public hearings. I will now recite the order and procedure, which will be in effect for both hearings. I'll wait for just a moment as the room clears.
Thank you, Russell family.
Thank you. Thank you for your words. Appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
I didn't make it. I cried.
Yeah. The first time was.
Thank you for 400 pages of reading. What was that?
Nobody wants to talk about property?
Okay, I will now recite the order and procedure, which will be in effect for both hearings. First, explanation of the subject of the public hearing by city staff. Second, presentation by applicant. Please note that council members should address their questions to the applicant at that time. Third, opening of the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. The order for those providing testimony will be as follows. First, those in favor, then those neutral, and then last, those opposed to the issue. Fourth, applicant's rebuttal testimony, at which time final questions may be asked of the applicant. Please note that if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, the public will be given an opportunity to comment on any new facts. Fifth, close the public hearing. And sixth, council will deliberate. No new information may be provided after the hearing has been closed, with questions directed only to city staff during deliberation, please. So with that, for the record, any written comments received prior to agenda posting were included in the meeting packet or otherwise provided to council. Please note that the public hearing is for comments only. Do not address any questions to the council or to myself or to city staff. If council members have questions for the person testifying, they should ask those questions at the time of their testimony. For those in attendance here in chambers this evening, if you'd like to speak, you'll need to complete a sign-up form located by the front door and hand it to the city clerk up front. Please state on your form whether you wish to speak in favor or neutral or in opposition to the request. Do not approach the dais. If you have any written materials for the council, please hand those to the clerk. For those participating on Zoom, please note that you'll need a working microphone and on your phone or computer to speak. For those who wish to speak in favor or neutral or opposed, I will call for testimony on each, and you will raise your hand on Zoom at that time. When your name is called, you'll see a prompt on your screen asking whether you'd like to unmute. Then you'll need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. The first public hearing is a request for preliminary approval of a 5-lot subdivision on one parcel on North Boyer Road, totaling approximately 0.98 acres, and consideration of a proposed development agreement. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on May 31st, 2022. Before we proceed, I'd like to ask for confirmation from each council member that you have had no ex parte contact or conflict of interest as pertains to this request.
Mr. Mayor, I've done business a number of times with Mr. Hammock, and we have had no ex parte communication about this.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay,
None for me.
Hearing none, I will take that to mean there is no potential conflict of interest for all members of this body. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeton for an introduction and explanation of this request. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a public hearing on case PS 21003, the Roberson Pines preliminary plat, which is a proposed 5-lot plat on 0.9 acres in the RS single family zoning district. The parcel is platted with an access easement to the 2 easterly lots rather than a public right-of-way. The property is within the inner critical zone as is shown in the lower right map. However, this residential zone was in place prior to the applicability of the ITD airport guidelines. This is not a request to rezone or for conditional use permit. So it is not subject to the compliance with those guidelines. The proposed plat would convert a portion of the easement into a public right-of-way, which would substantially improve the access for emergency services to the existing residences and would provide the required lot frontage on a public street to the lots of the subdivision. The new public right-of-way at 26 feet meets fire code and is allowed in the subdivision code as a purely local drive. This width is considered substandard for city equipment, and that is why there's a condition for a private maintenance for maintenance of that road. A full 60-foot right-of-way dedication would not be viable for this property due to the existing structures and the lot sizes. Fire access turnaround is also provided between lots 4 and 5. See here. Pedestrian access will be provided in the easement and a sidewalk will be constructed per city code. All lots proposed will meet the RS single family size requirements. And there is one existing structure on the parcel that will remain. The proposed subdivision will not increase access points onto North Boyer Road, and water and sewer extensions will be required for the subdivision. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on the request at its June 21st meeting and recommended approval of the Roberson Pines preliminary plat to City Council with conditions that have been incorporated into the development agreement. A signed and notarized fair disclosure statement shall be recorded for all lots within the subdivision pertaining to the intercritical zone in accordance with Sandpoint City Code 912.5E. There will be a note added onto the plat referencing the fair disclosure statement. A road maintenance agreement will be accepted by the city and referenced on the final plat for the public right-of-way and include provisions for snow removal and signage to preclude on-street parking. The final plat shall include a note prohibiting additional lot access to North Boyer Road, and the development agreement provided to City Council will be recorded prior to issuance of any construction permits, providing terms and conditions required for public improvements. And that was included in the staff report. Amend the right-of-way dedication note to omit city and add privately maintained. And then also the note omitted referencing the easement along the section that is publicly dedicated. Generally, the subdivision process provides following any approval of a preliminary plat, the development agreement is executed, enabling a construction permit for public infrastructure to be issued. The development agreement provides terms and conditions for full compliance with the city code. Completion of public infrastructure is required prior to recording of a final plat, and the final plat recording is required prior to any issuance of building permits. Pursuant to Sandpoint City Code Section 10.1.8, following the consideration of a preliminary plat at a public hearing, the City Council may approve with conditions, deny, or remand the preliminary plat back to the Planning Commission. That is all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Okay. Next, we will hear from the applicant. Is the applicant here with us? Okay. Sir, the floor is yours.
Oh, Mike Hammock. Thank you for your time, everybody. I really have nothing to present. I mean, you guys have all the information in front of you. I'm willing to do whatever the city wants. If we have to make changes, whatever we've got to do. I'm just here to have fun and get along. So.
Okay. Does council have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So in the planning and zoning meeting, there was a resident that lives on that street that had some concerns. Were her concerns addressed?
Yes.
Okay. To satisfaction?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
And do you want to
Can we,
be explicit about what that was?
please?
It was the width of the road. She wanted to make sure they'd be able to get in and out. Right now, that thing's maybe 10 feet wide of gravel. Gets ruts in it. There's a lot of brush along it. She was worried about, I believe, cars blocking the access and snow removal. If I remember right, those were her only comments on that.
As Mr. Mayor, if I might, I believe Mrs. Osborne also asked about the water line and how that would be tied in if that was going to be paved over.
So her water line and my water line both come off of Northside Water, which has an asbestos water line out there. They're abandoning that, and the city is going to take over supplying the water to those structures and all the new ones. So that will be a new water main ran down there. So it'll be a new water main ran to the property line where her easement starts. She's the next house back in. So she has an easement going through the next property. And we won't do any work in there, but her water meter will be moved to the end of that, and it'll be a city water main to that point.
And then I believe she had another question about, excuse me, when I go through my notes here. No trespassing or a dead end sign. Is that something that you're going to provide
Yeah.
as well? And does that go to the first property owner on the east then?
You know, I don't know who with the city I would talk with, but I will put it up and put it wherever the city wants it, I don't know what regulations there are on signage, where it goes, how tall it needs to be, any of that. You know, I've used HMH. Dan Taddick is now the engineer on this project. I'm sure he knows where to put a sign. So somebody's got to tell, actually, the contractor doing the work, which is Advanced Dirt Works. He's working on the U of I project and a couple other projects. So he'll be doing the work. And between them, you know, that can be wrote in a condition. However we do this, whatever works best for you guys. So,
Okay. Council, any other questions for the applicant?
Nope, I really appreciate planning and zoning because they did a really thorough job after watching it and taking notes, and every question I had eventually was answered. So I really appreciate the work of planning and zoning and Amy too. So.
They've all been great to work with. So
Thank you, Mr. Hammock. Appreciate that.
thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. The order of those providing testimony will be as follows. First, we will hear from those in favor, then those neutral, and last, those opposed. So do we have anyone who would like to testify in favor of the request? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, there isn't anyone online who is going to be testifying this evening. And all those in the room who are in attendance who turned in sheets are interested in simply letting us know that they're in favor. We received 4 comments from those who are in favor of the project. None of those folks wish to speak.
Okay. So as I understand it, there's no one here that would like to testify neutral to the request. And there's no one here that would like to testify opposed to the request. Okay. So certainly there's no need for the applicant to rebut. So we will now close the public hearing and council may deliberate, and let me remind council no new information may be provided after the hearing has been closed. And please direct your questions to city staff during deliberation. Council, the floor is yours.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I have no reason to believe that Mr. Hammock won't put a sign up, but would it be, if that's something the council decides they want to respect that lady's wishes, although he has no requirement to do so legally, is that something we'd want to put as an amendment or trust factor, just trust that it'll do it? Or what do you have a recommendation towards that? Saying if that's not in the amendment, from what I understand, from what I read, there's no legal obligation for him to put up a sign at all. Maybe Amy, you could help with that.
If council feels that that is a needed additional condition of approval, we can add that to the development agreement as well.
I personally don't think it needs to be, but just throwing that out there.
Mr. Mayor, and Amy, you had received no communication with Mrs. Osborne after the planning and zoning meeting about it, the signage or the water line or any of her other concerns that she had that evening?
I did not. My understanding is the developer spoke with her after the meeting and she did not reach out to me after that.
And we also, you mentioned, I think you asked about snow removal? Because I know in the P and Z hearing, it was said that the developer will take care of most of the street in front of the 5 properties, but then she would be on her own. Correct?
I believe believe that was.
Yeah.
P and Z.
No, council seems pleased with the work that has been done thus far. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the request. I would entertain a motion that the Sandpoint City Council, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, approve the preliminary plat application by Hammett Construction for the Roberson Pines 5-lot subdivision for parcel RPS 377700B0010A, located at 624 Roberson Way on the east side of North Boyer Road, approximately 600 feet south of Schweitzer Cutoff Road, in accordance with conditions incorporated into the development agreement as presented, and authorize myself to sign and enter into the agreement. Based on evidence, records, and testimony, for the reasons for approval are that staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to subdivisions contained in Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9, and based on information presented at the hearing and the placement of limitations through conditions, the application is in compliance with the subdivision and zoning requirements in Sandpoint City Code. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
And the request is approved. Congratulations. The second and final public hearing this evening is a request for approval of final development plan and preliminary plat for a 49-lot residential planned unit development at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Ebbett Way, totaling approximately 5.73 acres. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee on May 31st, 2022. At this time, I will ask for confirmation from each council member that you've had no ex parte contact or conflict of interest as pertains to this request.
Mr. Mayor, in full disclosure, I work with Lisa Moline. We sit on a nonprofit board. I know Nancy Hadley through Rotary. We have had no ex parte communication about this.
And is full disclosure, I have had a conversation with the applicant's representative about this project, Mr. Rob Hart, who's with us today. He was just sharing his perspective on it. I don't think A, I'll be voting on this, and B, that would have any impact on my decision here this evening. So everyone else has said what they need to say. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeton for an introduction and explanation of this request.
Again, Culver's Crossing is a proposed 47 lot with 49 units residential plan unit development at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Ebbett Way. Planned unit developments are authorized by Sandpoint City Code Title 10, Chapter 3, which allows a development to modify or waive standard land use regulations in order to promote beneficial development of an entire tract of land in conformance with an approved PUD permit, which accentuates usable open space, recreational uses, public amenities, community housing, and harmonious development with surrounding properties and the city at large. Section 10.3.1 states the purpose of the regulations regarding planned unit developments is to encourage PUDs to achieve the following objectives: a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types and permitting an increased density per acre and a reduction in lot dimensions, yards, building setbacks, and area requirements; a more useful pattern of open space and recreation areas, and if permitted as part of the project, more convenience in the location of neighborhood commercial areas, recreational uses and services; a development pattern which preserves and utilizes natural topography and geologic features; scenic vistas, trees, and other vegetation, and prevents the disruption of natural drainage patterns. A more efficient use of land than is generally achieved through conventional development, thus resulting in substantial savings through shorter utilities and streets while encouraging connectivity. And a development pattern in harmony with land use density, multimodal transportation facilities, and community facilities, objectives of the comprehensive plan. Again, the PUD process is slightly different than a standard subdivision. So the first step in the process is the preliminary development plan, hearing and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They held the hearing on the preliminary development plan, and then the Planning Commission also holds a hearing and recommends to City Council the final development plan and preliminary plat. City Council takes action on the final development plan and preliminary plat. Then the infrastructure is developed. Then the final plat comes back to City Council, the plat is recorded, and then the lots can be sold. The Culvers Crossing preliminary development plan was approved with conditions by the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 5th of this year. A final development plan and preliminary plat in substantial conformance with preliminary development plan conditional approval were then submitted. The final development plan provides 49 dwelling units in a mix of single-family attached townhouse lots, single-family detached, and one multifamily structure of 3 units, which is called the historic house, with a carriage house, which is an accessory dwelling unit. The proposed structure elevations, floor plans, construction standards, and lot sizes were all included in the PUD. The development is anticipated to be platted in one phase with units completed in 4 phases over a 5-year period, as shown on the map to the right. All the dwellings are accessed from Irving Way that connects Culvers Drive to the west and Ebbett Way to the south. And also by 20-foot purely local drives that will be publicly dedicated but privately maintained. And again, that public dedication is needed so that city codes can be enforced. However, given the width, city maintenance cannot maintain our standards, and that is why there is a private maintenance provision. Concurrently with the final development plan, the Culvers Crossing preliminary plat was submitted with noted conditions. The plat is able to meet the standards of Sandpoint City Code section 10.16. The required traffic impact study did not identify additional needed on or offsite improvements to the road network caused by the development. And the plat notes that 12.4% of the gross area is common open space. Conditions have been recommended to address the private maintenance of the purely local drives and common open space, access and parking restrictions, and parking restrictions where needed due to pavement width. At its June 21st meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission conditionally recommended approval of the final development plan and preliminary plat. The commission recommendation included the following conditions with the modifications noted. Conditions 1 through 10 are required if there is a motion to approve. All structures on townhouse lots are considered single-family attached dwellings, the big house and the twin houses. The historic house is a 3-unit structure which is permitted in the RS district through a PUD and has an accessory dwelling unit identified as the carriage house. The open spaces shall be provided in accordance with the application, not less than 12.4% of the total gross area. privately maintained and fully functional. The final plat shall provide reference to the open space and responsibility of maintenance and city-approved CCNRs incorporating detailed maintenance standards and provisions. The final stormwater management plan shall be developed in a manner that does not negatively affect functionality of the open spaces. Appendix A zoning standards provides the allowed standards for building permit review. And that will be what was included with your report will be modified in accordance with the updated condition number 13 below. Other city codes in place at time of building permit application shall apply. Modifications to the standards provided by Appendix A may only be approved by way of an amended PUD. On-street parking on one side of the street shall be permitted where the pavement width is 28 feet or more, and parking on both sides of the street shall be permitted where the pavement width is 36 feet or more. No parking signs shall be provided wherever these conditions are not met. The carriage house and accessory dwelling unit to the historic house is limited to a single dwelling unit. Purely local drives shall be privately maintained. The final plat shall provide reference to the responsibility of maintenance and city-approved CCNRs incorporating detailed maintenance standards and provisions. No left turn signs shall be installed at the intersection of Irving Way and Ebbett Way. All existing drive approaches to North Boyer Avenue shall be removed and curb installed. The plat shall provide a note prohibiting any access off North Boyer Avenue applicable to lots 16 through 26. No lots may be sold and no building permits issued prior to final platting. The CCNR shall provide that the HOA will determine the specific use of the open spaces within 2 years of completion of phase 1. Sidewalks shall be provided along both sides of Irving Drive. No sidewalks are required along the purely local drives. Condition 13, which has been updated from when this was at the Planning Commission. The common open space shall be provided by way of a platted lot, block 1, lot 16, and meet the requirements of 1036 by consisting of at least 10% of the gross land area. The common open space shall be dedicated to the homeowners association for the benefit and use of the development. The HOA shall be responsible for preserving the trees in accordance with the approved landscape plan and all associated maintenance, including but not limited to weed management. Any exterior perimeter fence around the common area shall not exceed 42 inches in height and shall be open rail design and shall have a gate for access to North Boyer Avenue. If the sidewalk must encroach into lot 16 to preserve trees, the final plat shall provide reference to a public pedestrian easement for that portion of the sidewalk. 14, developer shall pay a fee in lieu of construction of a sidewalk along Culver's Drive. Lots 5, 10, 11, 46 shall provide a landscape screen within the 6-foot setback. In accordance with City Code 10.3.10.1, the development shall be initiated within 2 years of the date of approval. The infrastructure construction and recording of the final plat shall occur within 2 years from the date of approval. The building construction and final certificates of occupancy shall occur in phases and completed within 5 years from date of PUD approval, as further described and conditioned in the development agreement. The driveway edges for block 2 are less than 35 feet from the pavement edge of Irvine Way per Sandpoint City Code section 10.16F. The deviation is approved through the PUD. Pursuant to Sandpoint City Code section 10.3.10, within 60 days after receipt of a final recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council shall either approve with supplementary conditions, or disapprove the application as presented. In taking action, the council shall specify the ordinance and standards used in evaluating the application, the reasons for approval or denial, the actions, if any, the applicant could take to obtain a permit. An approval or approval with supplementary conditions may be satisfied by a motion requiring a final master development agreement returned to City Council. And that is all I have as presentation.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Does council have any questions for staff at this time?
Amy, I just have a clarifying question. One of those conditions prohibits any access to lots 16 through 47, I believe, from Boyer, but then another condition requires pedestrian access from lot 16 to Boyer. So is it necessary to clarify that that's vehicle access? Or do I assume that to mean vehicle access only from Boyer?
Right, that one goes with eliminating the existing curb cuts.
Right.
So that's what the intent of that is, that down the road, a homeowner doesn't think they're gonna have a secondary driveway
Gotcha.
out to Boyer,
Okay. So it applied only to vehicle access.
only to vehicle.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Next will be the applicant's presentation. As a reminder, council should address their questions to the applicant at that time. Mr. Hart?
You want to start the slideshow?
Oh, sure.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Rob Hart, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bonner Community Housing Agency, and I am very happy to be here tonight. I don't need to tell you that we have a housing crisis. We see it every day with businesses closing, residents being displaced, and even chairlifts not operating. Anyone who attended the mayor's task force on workforce housing knows that the number one question is, what can we do to provide affordable housing for our residents? Hopefully, we'll be discussing some answers to that question tonight. Click. Culver's Crossing is a collaboration between second-generation Sandpoint native Nancy Hadley and the Bonner Community Housing Agency to create the first privately funded affordable housing project in North Idaho. That collaboration means that many of the proposed homes will be covered by the agency's local housing program. Those homes will only be available to local employees, seniors, and the disabled on an income restricted basis. That does not mean that all homes will meet affordability requirements, but we're trying to make as many as possible, as affordable as possible. So what does affordable housing mean? Our agency follows the guidelines of the State of Idaho Housing and Finance Association, the IHFA. The IHFA has categories of affordable housing that we use that are based on median income and household size as reported by the state for Bonner County. For 2022, the median income in Bonner County for a family of four is $72,000. Median income is supposed to mean that half the population makes more and half makes less. We have a saying at the agency, though, that in our experience, more than half of the local residents make less than median income. Very low income housing is for those who make 50% or less of median income, and we provide that type of housing at our Freeman Lake at Trestle Creek project. Low income housing is for those who make from 50% to 80% of median income, and in our experience, that's more like average income here in Sandpoint. And then there's moderate income housing, and that's for families that make up to 120% of median income. As a side note, we at the agency don't really like the terms that the state uses. It seems to us that if a family in Sandpoint is making $60,000 a year, that's a good living wage. The problem is, it's almost impossible to buy or rent a house with that wage, and that's what we're trying to address. In all cases, we want to make sure that a household does not spend more than 30% of its annual income on housing. That is the definition of affordable housing. So let's use an example. Four-person household who makes median income and they want to buy a house at Culver's Crossing. 30% of their income of $72,000 leads us to a monthly housing allowance of $1,800. Then we reverse engineer that monthly housing allowance into a monthly mortgage payment on a typical 30-year 80% loan, which gives us a purchase price of $397,000 using current interest rates. That may seem high to you, but according to state of Idaho guidelines, affordable housing for a four-person household can be as high as $476,000 if we use moderate income limits. I share this with you as a frame of reference. These figures change every year. And we know most people don't have a 20% down payment. So we try to be mindful to keep the prices as low as we can for the homes in our program. But let's look at this another way. If you are wealthy or a speculator or an investor, don't contact us. But if you have two people in your household who make from $15 to $20 an hour, and you have good credit, maybe not very much down payment, maybe some consumer debt, you probably could afford to buy a home at Culver's Crossing. I have a stack with me of 30 letters of support that have already been entered into the record. The mayors of Dover and Pend Oreille, local police chiefs, the vice president of Tomlinson Sotheby's, and even the president of the American Planning Association have all written their support for creating quality homes that locals can afford. Another point of reference, the community response to our project has been so overwhelming that we've had to resort to a lottery to sell the homes in our program. But Culver's Crossing is not just about affordable housing. The bigger picture is that we are proposing to do this in a setting of creative land planning, using your PUD format to provide benefits to both the landowner and to the community. This format is rarely used in Sandpoint because it is cumbersome and time-consuming, but the results can be worth the effort. We started with a theme, click. And that theme was that there was this original estate that owned all of the land in this part of North Sandpoint. And over time, it sold off lots, some for homes and some for townhomes. That left this estate on a large half-acre lot with its main house that has been converted into 3 apartments and a carriage house as an accessory dwelling unit over 4 garages. Click. In considering our surroundings, we have industrial uses to the west and residential uses to the east. And so that led us to increase density with more affordable homes on the west and decrease density with more market rate homes to the east. We have some lots that are smaller than are allowed under RS zoning and some lots that are much larger than allowed. But overall, our density does not exceed the RS zoning limit. The PUD format helps Nancy get a variety of home types so that she can help those who've been shut out of the housing market. And we're keenly aware of other developments along the North Boyer corridor and around Sandpoint. Click. And so we made a commitment not to clear cut the site before development. Instead, we hired a surveyor and a forester to provide a tree survey, which we then used to save as many large, healthy trees as possible. And if you visited the site recently, you've seen dozens of trees, groves of trees, even bunches of wild roses that have red ribbons around them because we're trying to save them. As we lay out the details, we may not be able to save every tree, but we've put into place a section of the development agreement that gives us and the city a little flexibility in this regard at the city's discretion. In addition to the tree survey, we did a full traffic impact analysis. The study showed with the addition of a couple signs, Culver's Crossing will have minimal impact on circulation. And even though it was not required, we also did a comprehensive phase 1 environmental analysis. That study showed there are no toxics on the site and no wetlands. Click. The PUD format allows us to cluster density and return provide open space for recreation and screening. The final development plan shows a 9,500 square foot community common lot connected to 20-foot wide open space common area that extends the full length of North Boyer down to Ebbett Way and then curves around to the west, extending to the new intersection of Irvin Drive. This common area is granted to the HOA to ensure adequate maintenance. Click. We've imposed upon ourselves 2 important restrictions for this greenbelt in our CC&Rs. One is that no solid or 6-foot high fences are allowed, and no cross fencing is allowed. The other is that no tree removal is allowed without the approval of the HOA and an arborist. The CC&Rs also state that the Culver's Crossing HOA may build a fence along North Boyer, and if they do, it must be an open rail fence, not more than 42 inches high, with a gate leading out to North Boyer. This subtle improvement will make the drive along North Boyer much more pleasant. You'll notice that I've included the grassy drainage swale to scale so that you can see that it does not affect the use of the common open space pursuant to your condition of approval number 3. This image also addresses condition of approval number 2, indicating that the open space is dedicated to the HOA, and condition of approval number 13, showing how the sidewalk can meander to avoid trees. I'll leave this image up here for a moment so that you can read the notes. Okay, click. You'll notice that our streets are not straight. There are intentional curves in them and narrowing for traffic calming purposes. We recognize that the city may have concerns about snow removal in these congested areas, so our CC&Rs call for the HOA to remove excessive snow accumulation on all rights of way that are less than 50 feet wide. Excuse me, all rights of way that are less than 60 feet wide. Almost all the streets are 60 feet wide. There's one portion that's a little narrower, and the HOA is required to assist with snow removal in that area. As another community benefit, the preliminary plat allows for a small piece of equipment access to the community common lot so that it can be used as a snow dumping site in the winter, and who knows, it may even become a little sledding hill. There are a series of conditions of approval that came from P&Z hearings and more that are attached to this action tonight. Some of these are expensive, and they reduce the ability of us to make homes affordable. But we have tried to accommodate all of them in the plans that are before you tonight. One condition that caused a lot of deliberation at our last hearing was number 11, asking for a determination of the use of the community common lot so that its completion would not be delayed. We can tell you now that the lot will be graded, hydroseeded, irrigated, with a local grass mix and mowed so that it will basically be a large lawn with a couple of picnic tables. The homeowners may decide to change that use later, but that is our starting point. This ties in with our goal of keeping homeowners' dues as low as possible. And it also gives families in townhomes with smaller yards a place to spread out and play. Culver's Crossing is already facing the headwinds of doubled interest rates and inflation greater than we've seen in 40 years. And so I ask the City Council to approve the project as presented and as conditioned by staff without imposing additional burdens. Please recognize that Nancy and the team have worked with the city in good faith for over a year. At the same time, the city has been responsive to our concerns, and we greatly appreciate that and hope that spirit of cooperation will continue. Also, please recognize this is the first privately funded affordable housing project in North Idaho, and so it will take continuing cooperation among all parties to be successful. On that subject, we have learned that our construction plans will be sent to Boise for review, instead of being reviewed by the city, as has been past practice. These plans have already been turned in, and so we would ask that the city ensure that they do not languish in the south, and that a review of the plans is made in all haste so that we may begin construction this summer. And of course, that assumes that you'll approve our application tonight, and I leave that to you. Click. Before I pass the mic, I'd like to thank Scott, Nicole, and Russell of Sewell Engineering, Matt and Dante of Selkirk Design, Marty of AJ Construction, Jake of Sonray Enterprises, and Lisa of Sandpoint Law Group, all of whom helped us get back here tonight. But most of all, I'd like to thank Nancy Hadley, because without her care for this community, you would not be reviewing the first of its kind affordable housing project in Sandpoint. Nancy's going to finish our presentation, and after she's spoken, we would both be happy to answer any questions. Nancy?
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I really appreciate the time. And I just wanted to reach out and thank the city for all of their help. We've been working on this for a year. My team up there, I mean, we have put a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it seems like I've written a lot of checks for this. but I am a second generation native of Sandpoint. I think you saw my grandchildren in the back when the meeting first started. They're fourth generation. I'm fortunate both of my boys left and moved back. Both have acquired homes before the market we're in right now. When I acquired this property about 20 years ago, I tried to figure out how to develop it without going broke, which is my first rule. And then so that local people could afford housing in Sandpoint. And it just seems like it has always been out of reach. And, you know, I started in Sandpoint at, 19, I bought a single wide trailer. And that doesn't seem to be a popular option for younger kids these days, nor is that really, I don't think, what the city wants to see as affordable housing. So I wanted to come up with something either, young families, teachers, nurses, people 55 and older, as a way that maybe we can get something that's not $500, $600, $700, $800,000. And each time that we have come up with an obstacle or wanted to know how to do something, the team and I sat down and really worked through it. Rob has created spreadsheet after spreadsheet. I've got an accounting background. I recreated his spreadsheets, double checked all the numbers, and they're tight, but they can work. And I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. My dad, there's a rifle range across the street with Leo Hadley's name on it. My great grandparents lived kitty corner to City Hall. My great grandmother was a midwife, and all the Hadley children were born there. I am rooted to this community, and I'm doing it because it feels like the right thing to do. I'm trying to be, ask for your trust that this will happen the right way. I want to create a neighborhood out there. As we were going through looking at all the conditions, I want homeowners dues to be 100 to 150 a year. I've lived in gated communities and I am involved in a homeowners association. And if we're trying to provide affordable housing where the house payment is $1,800, $1,500, any extra money that you put on that is going to be difficult for people to come up with. And then as we created it, we tried to also kind of create a neighborhood feel where the homeowners association will be able to take care of some of the maintenance issues. Where the streets get narrow, we can go in with a piece of equipment and create a snow hill on the common lot. And we would like the opportunity to really deal with our neighborhood issues as a neighborhood and create kind of that feeling of Sandpoint that I've grown up with. So I appreciate everything that you do for the city and your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hadley. Any questions from council for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, either Rob or Nancy, how many of the houses on these lots here are going to be quote unquote affordable, and how many will be at market value?
Right now, we're still getting all the final costs in, and I'm working with the bank on finances. So I would like to say 60% will be sold probably under current market value or under what I could sell them at through a realtor. I'm going to have to sell some to get the financing and to make the project go forward. Again, it's my intention not to go broke during this process. So
thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Maybe this question is for Rob. You mentioned the lottery and the waiting list. I personally have friends who have entered in that lottery. What is the system you'll use to actually, is it literally going to be drawing names from a hat, or are there other criteria, loopholes that people have to jump through to be qualified beyond what you've already described in terms of local employment and income thresholds?
Yes, there is a very formal qualification process, and you come in, you're interviewed at the agency, and anybody who's on the list knows that process. We're going to be following, as a general rule, the process that was followed up at the expansion to the White Pines up at Schweitzer, which was also done by lottery. We're using the same team of people who did that. It's going to be televised. It's going to be the most popular show on TV that night. It's probably going to be held right here in town and run by Sandpoint Computers. But there is a series of steps that each person has to go through with filling out a purchase contract, selecting the units they might be interested in, and pre-qualifying that we hope will narrow down the vast number of people we have to a more manageable number. And then the numbers will be drawn in a typical lottery fashion. When people come up and their number is drawn, they'll be able to select whatever unit is available. They're not locked in. They can pick whatever unit is available, or they can go into second position on any unit that has already been selected. So they have that option. And that's how the White Pines one worked, and it worked out very well. And so we're going to follow that same process. The first phase will only be 15 units, and so we'll be talking about a lottery for 15 units.
Will there be, you mentioned the White Pines, one of the promises of the new White Pine development was some affordable studio type units that were priced, according to Schweitzer, at a shockingly reasonable price of about $350,000. But the problem was nobody got those because the winners of the lottery for the adjacent units had first right of refusal. Will any of the winners, so they ended up buying it as a second add-on to their 3-bed, 2-bath unit up there. Are there any opportunities for winners of the lottery to buy more than one unit in your development?
No.
No.
But that's what you bring up another good point, which is the right of first refusal. And I didn't get into that because my presentation was a little bit long, but we have what's called a period of affordability at Culver's Crossing. And so when you buy a home there, what happens is Nancy has the right to buy the home back from you, a contractual right to buy that home back from you at what you paid plus the consumer price index in the first 2 years. If you hold it for the next year 3 and year 4, she has the right to buy it back from you at the consumer price index ×2. So the longer you hold it, you'll make a little bit of appreciation, but our goal is to have a period of affordability of 4 years, which is longer than when we first started talking to you about this project a year ago. So we've been able to double the period of affordability.
So beyond that 4 years, do we assume the houses in this neighborhood will convert to market priced housing beyond that?
So one of the problems we ran into is if something happens, a life emergency happens to somebody who's bought a home and they need to move, that made deed restrictions very difficult, very challenging. And other parts of the team, the lenders and that weren't really comfortable with deed restrictions. So we came up with this right of first refusal. But what that does is if somebody leaves, let's say on year 2, Nancy gets it back, it can go right back into the program and start another 4 years. If somebody stays there the first day of year 5, they can do what they want. But we've held a period of affordability for 4 years.
Okay.
We're trying to do a couple things here. One is we want to help the housing crisis, but we also want to help these families begin to build a little bit of wealth. And so if they do stay for 5 years, they help create that neighborhood, then everybody wins.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So thank you. I don't hear frustration. I'm not here to say that this is a frustrating process, but what I did hear is that this is the first of its kind. What we are seeing and experiencing are raising some of these hypotheticals that most of us haven't really been challenged to deal with. And so we're trying to think through some anticipation that may or may not happen. I fully believe that you and Ms. Hadley are completely well-intended, and your staff and your team are completely well-intended. We are, like you had said, we have been made very well aware of a housing issue in the nation as well as up here. I believe that all of us in this community are doing their very best to accommodate those needs and do this in a wise way. And so I want to express some, continue to be encouraged, although that this is a challenging process and our staff are working very, very hard to work with. This is a very unique problem to try to solve, and we are all trying to figure out what the right thing to do is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for Amy. So when it was mentioned that the plans have to go to Boise, why do the plans have to go to Boise?
I believe that is the building permits.
No, these are the site improvement plans, roads, water, sewer, drainage.
Oh,
So that we can get
we have a
started.
contract engineer from Boise.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes
And
sense.
Nancy, thank you for explaining the HOA fees, because I was concerned about that too. Great house price, but $500 a month HOA fees would kill you. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
A couple things, just out of curiosity, and I agree with you. The last thing you want to do is try to do something good and go broke. That'd be no good. So commend you for all that you're doing. Could somebody buy, let's say hypothetically, win the lottery, buy it and be like, cool, got it, go move somewhere else and rent it out?
No, that's, there are certain restrictions that go, that's part of the interview process. The home must be occupied as your principal residence. There are state of Idaho rules about that. We can't prevent somebody going on vacation and renting out the home while they're on vacation. We're not allowed to prevent that, but we can prevent it from becoming an Airbnb community. So it is, one of the requirements is that the home is your principal residence. Another one is that you are locally employed, senior or disabled. And there are a bunch of other detailed requirements that all follow IHFA guidelines for affordable housing.
Appreciate that. So they can go on like a really long vacation and rent it out.
Not more than 180 days.
Okay, so legally.
It's
Okay.
181 days. You must reside in the home. It must be your principal place of residence.
And say in the 1 year that they decide for a tragedy, they need to move somewhere else, you have the right, can they sell it to anybody or is it strictly?
No, it's this is contractual. And
Contractual,
one of the things I
Make
want
sure
to
I'm understanding. I appreciate
bring
that.
up is what Councilor Grote was bringing up is we're sort of all learning together how to do this. And so we started with deed restrictions and have moved to a much, we think, more enforceable and easier to understand process where Lisa Moline is actually drawing up all the contracts. The purchase and sale agreements will be drawn by her for Nancy. And in that contract, it says that Nancy has the right of first refusal to buy that home. So they can't just sell it to anybody. Nancy has the right to buy it back at the purchase price plus CPI for the first 2 years, the purchase price plus double the CPI for years 3 and 4. And it says on year 5, the right of first refusal is extinguished. But it's a contractual obligation.
Mhm. Right. Just a couple more questions. If I heard you correctly, you said roughly the average lowest price is gonna be about 395,000.
No, not at all. I was using an example of how we set home prices using the local housing program. The home prices, we're gonna, we're just getting our bids in now and getting ready to start construction. If we get approval, we have to stage all these things, hoping that we get a positive response. But I think you're gonna see that some homes will be lower priced than that. That's our goal. We don't want to be at the 120% of median income. We want to be, in the middle of the market. But this is not a low income housing project. I want to emphasize that this is for the people that you want to have working for you, and they're having a hard time finding a place to live. And they make a decent income, and hopefully we can help them out.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. How does it work with the applicants and their financing? Do they come in pre-approved with their own financing? Do you guys write that down based upon the criteria selection? Maybe you could explain to us a little bit more about that.
Sure, good question. What happens is each applicant is responsible to get their own financing. We have some lenders that we know of that work with a program that we have called Finally Home. So the agency offers a class. It's a 6-hour full day class where you come in and you go through this how to buy a home, how to own a home, how to operate a home class. And once you've gone through that, then you qualify for a better rate in your financing with many different lenders. And so we try to help them with that. But ultimately, each home buyer is responsible to get their own financing. We tell them about different programs that are available. Everything from all the way down to 3% down. And that's why we have to be flexible in terms of our income restrictions, is a lot of people don't have 20% down. They need to make a little bit more money because they're putting less down, which means they have to afford a slightly higher monthly payment. So what we do is we fix the sales price and using the formula. And then the person who comes in, as long as they qualify to buy that home and they bring us a pre-qualification letter from a bank, We do have maximum income limits, but if they're within that range, we'll sell the house to them. We're not competing, and people aren't bidding against the homes.
Right.
That's why there's a lottery. The home price is set. And then we pick your name, and then you need to qualify.
Mr. Mayor? Amy, so does our short-term rental ordinance apply to this this development?
If they are owner occupied, then they are allowed to rent short-term. If they are not owner occupied, they would have to get on the waiting list.
Thank you.
And
Did you want to respond to that as well?
well, any home in the program is required to be owner occupied. You sign a certification before we even let you get through the interview process. We want to disclose all this stuff up front. Your income, where you work, and your income, size of the family, household size, all of that kind of stuff. We don't discriminate against that, but we do want to know what it is.
And presumably a locally employed individual who qualifies isn't going to be out of the house for 180 days a year.
Right.
Now, I've heard of developments like this where something like 75% of local household income has to be, or I should say 75% of household income has to be earned locally. Are you looking at percentage of total household income? For example, I know several friends who the couple works remotely out of a firm in Colorado and the other one works locally.
So-
Would that household qualify for this?
That came up in the Community Land Trust presentation that we just went to. And we don't have that requirement. Our requirement is that you are employed locally. What that means to us is that you can commute to work from your place of residence.
Does that apply to both income earners though, in a dual income household?
We don't get into that. That's the lender. That's up to the lender to determine how much income is needed to service the loan. But in order to get on the list, even to get on the list, you need to be locally employed. That doesn't mean working remotely for a company in San Francisco. That means employed here with a business here in town.
Bonner County.
Our range is Priest River to Hope, Athol to Bonners.
Okay.
That range we consider commute distance. So if you don't work within that range, you're not going to get on the list. So we have to be very careful though, that we're not discriminating. So we work with, it's called the Intermountain Fair Housing Council. And they have reviewed our pre-qualifications. And what's important is that we don't discriminate against seniors because they don't work, or the disabled who can't work. And so that's why I always add that in there. And we do have some seniors who are on the list, and we're not going to be checking their employment. And that would be 65 and older.
And Mr. Hart, I just want to make sure that, Jason's question wasn't missed. The question was, does that apply to all income earners within the house? So if you did have, say you had a primary income earner that was employed here in town, but you had a secondary income earner that was employed remotely from somewhere far out of the region, would that couple qualify?
That's a good question. And that comes up to the same question where if you have a primary home buyer who comes in and his father wants to help him co-sign on the loan, who lives in New York City. I believe that we have so many people on our list that meet the requirement of being locally employed that we will not have to get into all of those details, but we will have to look to IHFA for guidance on how those, what they do in that case. I believe what happens is that the people who are on the loan need to be locally employed. I believe that's the requirement. So,
Mr. Mayor, because to flip that, it could be where you have a married couple, one, let's say the wife is working remotely, making $600,000 a year, and the husband's working at a restaurant and, part-time, but easily they can qualify.
$600,000 a year would be over the income limits.
Perfect. Okay.
So they would
yeah,
not
I
be
must
able
have
to
missed that. I
qualify.
appreciate
Yeah, we have an income limit that's IHFA guideline for all all programs that are used under the agencies that are supported by IHFA, that we can't entertain any incomes over $125,000.
That's great. And I guess my next question is, what if somebody does what would happen in a situation where they qualify? Go ahead, you want to say something?
I just want to answer
Please
Mayor
do, yeah,
Shelby's
go
question
ahead.
because it just came up through that answer, is if that father who's helping out makes more than $125,000 a year, they wouldn't qualify.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So that's kind of the limiting factor there.
How long do I have to be working in Sandpoint to qualify?
There is no limit to that. In fact, we ran into that problem with Intermountain Fair Housing.
Okay.
Because if you have a person who, let's say they want to go work at Bonner General, and we do have this situation, but they live in Post Falls or they live in Spokane and they want to move here so that they can work at Bonner General, we don't want to discourage that person because we need that person at the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's okay if they bring evidence of employment or pending employment, that works fine.
Another example I hear constantly is the school district trying to recruit teachers to our community. We need housing for teachers. If we make an opportunity like this available to them, and it might make Sandpoint a more attractive place to come teach at a $45,000 teacher salary.
Right, and hopefully what we're doing here is we're charting a path. We're saying, we're being a little bit of guinea pigs, but if it works, then other people can say, hey, here's a formula that it's not too overly bureaucratic. There's not a lot of red tape. And it worked. And then we can start having this happen as parts of other projects, not the whole project. Yes.
I didn't get to ask my question, so I'm curious. Let's say it was me. I won the lottery and I bought the house and I lost my job, whether I got fired or I quit, but I was able to still make the pay. Is there a follow-up like, hey, you're still working at Sandpoint? Or if I knew that I had a plan B, I just working at Sandpoint to get the house and then I know I gotta, somebody's gonna help me out.
So
Just
that
curious.
comes to enforcement.
Okay.
And that's, we have the same issue, whether you're trying to build a house without a building permit, or you're doing something that isn't allowed under the city code, the police. Enforcement is a tough thing. We're a very small agency. We don't have an enforcement action. But where that comes into play usually is through the lender. The lender will say, wait a minute, you lost your job. You're not qualifying to make your payments anymore. We probably do not have a real big enforcement ability right now, but we certainly do check during the interview process.
Appreciate it. And I want to be clear, I'm very thankful to see what you guys are doing. So thanks. I'm just trying to help out. Maybe people might try to cheat the system is all. That the good thing you're trying to
Go
do.
ahead.
That's all.
I might just add, I've thought about it and talked to Rob about it. There's no way we're going to be able to screen 100% of the people that might want to try to cheat the system.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we're not going to do the right thing to try to get as many people in here. And in the 40% that I'm going to sell, probably, myself or outside of the program, I'm still going to try to keep it affordable. I've got one teacher that I'm working with him, and it's not going to be at the same prices that Bonner Community Housing is going to use for the lottery, but it's still going to be affordable. And I just, if 5 or 10 people get a house and they get around it, so be it. But if we get 20 people out there with houses and they live there for the next 20 years and work in the community, we won. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Amy, I just wanted to ask a little bit more in depth about the paperwork going down to Boise. And do we have, is that not necessarily going to be expedited, but what is the process and timelines so that there can be a little bit more reassurance that it won't lag because we're.
What Rob was referring to is a public infrastructure permit, and that typically, once preliminary plat is approved, that's developed, it goes to the engineer for review. And I had previously informed Rob that this was the process and that it can take up to 6 weeks to get the public infrastructure permit approved.
Okay, so there is a set guideline for how long that will take. It could be less, but it could take as long as that, but it's not going to put them in a position where it got kind of to the bottom and took way longer. Okay.
It's when things come in, we just take them, they get processed as they come in.
Okay, so the standard is 6 weeks. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hart. Thank you, Ms. Hadley. Appreciate that. Okay, the public hearing is now open, and I will remind everyone that first we will hear from those who are. Pull up my notes. Here in a sec. Lost my place. First, we will hear from those who are opposed. No, I'm sorry, in favor. In favor. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who would like to comment on this project who's in favor of the request?
Mr. Mayor, there is no one online who will be commenting on this project or commenting during the public hearing. And I would also like to clarify for the record. Earlier, I mentioned the 4 sheets I'd received from folks who had indicated that they were in favor of the project. Those were actually for this project, for 9B.
Okay.
We actually had no testimony for item 9A.
Okay.
And no one in the room has indicated that they wish to speak at all.
Okay. So I will then verify that you have 4 people who've written in favor, but do not wish to speak. There's no one here or online that wants to speak neutral to the request, and there's no one here or online who wants to speak opposed or is opposed to the project, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Hearing that, I just want to give everyone one more chance. No one here wants to speak to the project, the request. In that case, the public testimony is now, the public hearing is now closed. And I'm assuming the applicant does not need to rebut. Okay. So council, it is on you to deliberate. If the floor is yours, if any of you want to comment, and I just want to remind you, we don't want to bring up any new information at this point. But the floor is yours if you want to speak to the project.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. I just have one comment, something I want to share that I really appreciate about this project. In addition to, of course, the affordability and that approach. One thing that has come up in past hearings and presentations for subdivisions is the issue of double frontage lots. And the staff report did acknowledge that there are some lots that qualify as double frontage, but I really want to commend the developer for respecting our city code, which asks that in the case of double frontage lots, that there's a 25-foot setback. That's public right of way, basically. And I love what you described about the 42-inch wide or 42-inch tall rail fence. I think that's a really nice accommodation that's going to make this development integrate with the surrounding area very well. And in respect to our former planning commissioner, Kate Huisman, who was concerned about plastic canyons, I'm happy to see where this is not going to contribute to the canyonization of North Boyer Avenue. So that's going to be a really nice, I think, visual addition to this development. And I really appreciate that. It warmed my heart to see that in your proposal. So.
Mr. Mayor? I would just like to concur and say that I could not have said it as well as Jason did. This has been a really important thing for me, and having sat on the planning commission and worked a lot with Kate, a passionate thing for us to have things present nicely as an environment you want to be in. And we've both learned and researched and understand traffic calming and why things are more pleasant and not. And so I appreciate your attention to that detail very much, and your efforts in actually trying to define and do something truly about the mystical word of affordable housing. Thank you.
As well, this is an affirmation you guys have done. The project looks beautiful. I commute back and forth there every day. I hope that there are other potential developers that are observing and are willing to enter into the different challenges that we have in an open and creative mind, which is one that I have seen produced here today. So thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank you both, you, Nancy. Thank you so much for this. As a single mom many years ago, it was really tough to find a place to rent, let alone a place to buy. So thank you for giving those families an opportunity to actually have a home And that's very appreciated. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Yeah.
just make one point of clarification for the record and for council before you move into a motion? With regards to condition 13, you will notice that is dramatically different than the condition that was brought to planning and zoning. And so I just want council to understand how this transpired. With regards to a PUD, as you know, there's a required amount of open space to give the consideration for the waivers from the zoning regulations. And so the first option on that open space for this particular PUD was recommended by staff to be a right-of-way dedication along Boyer Avenue. And the applicant came to planning and zoning offering that open space in the form of an easement. And so those are two options, but sort of a middle ground between those two options we stumbled to in working collaboratively with the applicant and their legal counsel is reflected in this condition 13, where that open space will actually be an extension of their lot 16 down that corridor along Boyer Avenue. And it'll be just a larger sort of flag looking lot that will be deeded to their HOA and maintained as open space by their HOA. And that is where this amended condition 13 came from. So just for the point of the record, I wanted to be really clear that option 1 was the right-of-way dedication. Option 3 was the easement. And then we collaboratively worked on this option for a deeded lot to their HOA, which would be maintained as open space.
Thank you, Fonda, for that clarification. All right. Is everyone clear on that? No questions? Okay. After consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, I would entertain a motion to approve the request by Nancy A. Hadley and James R. Aiken for the Culvers Crossing Final Development Plan and Preliminary Plat on parcels RPS 008-200-1004AA, RPS S008-200-2001AA, RPS 008-200-2010BA, and RPS 008-200-2009BA, located at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Ebbett Way, subject to a final master development agreement returning to City Council for approval, incorporating the conditions as presented in the staff presentation, amended as follows. There are no amendments, my apologies. The motion is based on findings provided through the submittal materials, Planning and Zoning Commission and recommendation, staff report, and testimony that pursuant to 10-3-10-H, the applicant establishes that the proposed development can be initiated within 2 years of the date of approval. Each individual unit of the development, as well as the total development, can exist as an independent unit capable of creating an environment of sustained desirability and stability, or that adequate assurance will be provided that such objective will be attained. The uses proposed will not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, but will have a beneficial effect which would not be achieved under standard zoning regulations. The streets and thoroughfares proposed are suitable and adequate to carry anticipated multimodal traffic. That increased densities will not generate vehicular traffic in such amounts as to overload the street network outside the PUD, and that any impacts have been adequately mitigated. Any exception from standard zoning requirements is warranted by the design and other amenities incorporated in the final development plan in accordance with this chapter and the adopted policy of the City Council. The PUD is in general conformance with the comprehensive plan. The existing and proposed utility services are adequate for the population densities and non-residential uses proposed. Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Espero,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Congratulations. Next is an update on the reassessment of Division Avenue as a truck route. The multimodal transportation master plan adopted in 2021 included an update to the city's truck routes. City Council directed staff to reassess restricting trucks on Division Avenue prior to completion of the Baldy extension. I will now yield the floor to Infrastructure and Development Services Director Amanda Wilson, who has a report for us. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Let's pull my presentation. Hey, good evening. Not anymore. There is no requested action this evening. This is only an update responding to a request from City Council to come forward with a analysis regarding a truck route diversion on Division. So I'll give you a brief presentation and conclusions of the analysis at the end. As a reminder, City Council adopted the Multimodal Transportation Master Plan in May of 2021. One of the goals of that plan included in Chapter 3, Goal 1, was to provide a balanced approach to mobility. I think that's a really important point when we're talking about freight and truck routes, because it certainly has an overall impact on all users, specific to pedestrians and bicycles, as well as the overall mobility of vehicles, and certainly our commerce when we're talking about truck mobility. That said, it's truly a balanced approach was the outcome of our multimodal transportation plan, where multiple projects have looked at the entire system of how to address that approach. To that end, in Chapter 5, there was a specific provision related to updating our truck routes. At the time, we hadn't actually updated our truck routes for over 20 years. If you'll recall. So that was pre-byway. That was still when we had trucks along Pine Street, just outside here at City Hall. And this analysis in the multimodal plan made many revisions to that previous truck route. And I have both of those images here tonight. On the left was our original truck route plan. On the right is the truck route plan that is included in the multimodal master plan. Just for clarification, when we're talking about trucks, we're looking at vehicles that are over 23,000 gross vehicle weight. That's per city code. The red on the map on the right, or the orange, is representing where we allow those vehicles to be. That map on the right is our current adopted truck route plan, and that was provided in the multimodal plan as a short-term solution. A number of system improvements are required throughout Sandpoint for the long-term solution. And one of those in particular is extending Baldy Mountain Road at Boyer Avenue to the highway to the east to get a lot of that industrial truck traffic off of our residential streets. We also noted that we need a signal at Baldy Mountain and Boyer Avenue, and that the new signal would be coordinated to assist with some of the queuing in that location, as well as other signal improvements throughout the city. All of those coming together to enhance that balanced approach to mobility, as well as larger projects such as the Division Avenue Safety Corridor project. Ultimately, when City Council reviewed the master plan, the recommendation to add an interim truck route assessment, which is what we're here tonight to talk about, was provided. And really, this was around the idea that while the master plan suggests that we have a short-term solution to keep trucks on Division Avenue until we've made these system improvements, the question council was asking is, but what if we took them off of Division now before we made these improvements? And so the result of that is what we're here to talk about tonight. We engaged Fair and Pierce, which is the city's traffic engineer consultant, to re-review the original recommendation. And they do that by conducting an operational analysis using a modeling system called Synchro. The map on the right of your screen is representing the current configuration in blue. This is where trucks are allowed on Division there on the left, and then obviously on Baldy Mountain and portions of North Boyer Avenue. So the study assessed, what if we took trucks off of the blue and just forced them to be on the green route? The green route that is reflected there is more the highway system, right? Which is traditionally where you would expect your truck traffic to be. And looking at the impacts to the intersections of 1, 2, and 3. So number 1 is Baldy Mountain and Boyer. Number 2 is Larch and Fifth. And then number 3 is Boyer and Highway 2. Part of that process included updating our traffic counts, looking at the developments that have been improved, look at increase of trips, as well as updating the modeling and looking at population forecasts as well. I do want to note, back to the balanced approach, and we've talked about it a lot at City Council, is that operational analysis is only one way to assess the implications of traffic. There are a lot of other qualitative assessments that go into making decisions, which is really the holistic effort that occurred with our multimodal plan. This effort is specific to modeling the impacts of the system as it relates to level of service. If you'll recall from our prior conversations, level of service is graded nationwide. It's truly a quantitative method of assessing an intersection and impacts. That's done by looking at delay and queuing, essentially. So we score it from A to F, A being free flowing and insignificant delay, means the intersection's functioning really well. And an F is that it's forced or unpredictable with excessive delays. The results of our study are on the screen before you. It's a lot of numbers, so I'm just going to give you the high level overview here. So the green boxes at the very top green box, that section is representing current conditions. What happens if we do this today? The middle box is what happens if we do this in 5 years? What's the system going to look like? Or if we did it today, what would the system look like in 5 years? And if we did it today, what would the system look like in 10 years is the bottom box. So again, top is now, middle is 5 years from now, and the bottom is 10 years from now. On the left-hand side, it's showing if we leave the truck route as adopted in the multimodal plan. So that map that I showed you at the beginning. And on the right-hand side, it says with the truck diversion, if we take trucks off of that blue and put them on the green only. It's trying to reflect here the implications. So what we find is that there's very little implications at the 5th and Larch intersection, but where we're really going to see the effects is at Baldy and Boyer, as well as US 2 and Boyer Avenue. So if just to hone in on that a little bit more, up at the top, you see the existing conditions are already a D at the Baldy and Boyer, and they're already a C at US 2 and Boyer. If we were to move trucks today, that D would go to an E, and today the C would remain a C in the morning, and it would go to from a B to a C in the PM. The AM and the PM is looking at peak times. So AM peak is 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. PM peak is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And those are just industry standards where we look at what the volume of traffic is at those peak times when most people are intended to travel. As you work down the list, what you'll see is that in the next 5 years, given the growth that we anticipate in some of these subdivisions, especially along North Boyer Avenue, that we've recently approved, including this evening, that volume of traffic is going to impact the system from an F to an F. And then as we work our way from Boyer Avenue to at US 2, it goes from a C to a D. So with that said, the multimodal plan adopted an acceptable level of service of D on our local system. I'll remind council that in 2017, we executed a memorandum of understanding with ITD that notes a level of service on their system of C as acceptable at those intersections, and diverting trucks off of Division prior to the system improvements would be inconsistent with both. Chapter 3 has as we discussed in the beginning, provides a balanced approach to mobility. Therefore, at this time, given the inconsistencies with the rest of the plan, the intent is to continue monitoring conditions, keep the system as it was adopted in May of 2021. And then I would say most importantly to achieve that balance is really to continue to pursue the actions that City Council adopted, including the safety improvements, the short-term safety improvements on Division, as well as continuing to implement the signal at Baldy and Boyer Avenue, which is ultimately what our traffic engineer recommended. They suggested that we wait until we have a signal in place at Baldy and Boyer before implementing any truck diversions. However, doing so would negatively affect the ITD system as well. So that's another factor that would come into play. And then as well, continue to progress our pedestrian priority network system and the other projects listed within the plan. That is all I have for my presentation, unless you have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions?
If you don't mind, Amanda, thank you for all the work you put into this. First of all, it's impressive to see that level of analysis. Just a clarification, that 5 to 10 year horizon, are either of those assuming the completion of the Boyer extension down to Highway 2? Or are those both assuming that that wouldn't be done in the 10 year horizon? I don't recall exactly what the time horizon is for that project.
Great question. The latter, meaning it was assuming that the extension was not completed.
Okay, and then you mentioned the, no further changes until the stoplight is installed at Boyer and Baldy. Is that slated to be done before the extension of Baldy down to Highway 2?
That's the intent, yes. There are some complex challenges that we need to resolve around installing a signal. The first being that we actually don't own or operate any signals within our city. They're all owned and operated by ITD. So that would be a first for us to tackle. But we do have some initial funds allocated to that investment that we required a developer to pay. And we need to begin that design process so that we have a shovel-ready project.
So can we assume if that's done in the next 2 to 5 years, then we'd be having this conversation again?
Respectfully, I think that's a little optimistic. I think we're closer to a 5 to 7 year on that signal.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So good job on all of that, but it's very vehicle centric. So it really just focuses on how we can get trucks and cars and everything else there. And you did point that out, that it doesn't talk about the level of service for what the whole reason for doing the study was. So we don't have data that explains how much safer it would be for our bikers or our kids or anything. So I don't feel like we've looked at the entire picture. I appreciate how hard you worked on all of this, and it makes sense. And I know that we have responsibilities, relative to Idaho's transportation routes and whatnot, but it just seems, societal wise, it seems sad that we can't place a higher priority on assessing the benefits that we would get or the dysfunction that exists for our pedestrians. Are they at F? And so then I'll stop there. I think I made my point.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond? I think you're spot on. The answer is absolutely, it would improve pedestrian safety on Division Avenue, without a doubt. And our multimodal plan already provided that as the data and assessment, as did our road safety audit that we did on Division, as is supported in our grant application to get improvements on Division sooner than later, as in starting next year. That's really where that balanced approach comes into play. This analysis was not to revisit, our staff's understanding of it was not to revisit whether or not we need to make improvements on Division, and if there's a value in moving trucks off of it. That absolutely is conclusive. The analysis is what would be the effect on the system. So yes, it would improve pedestrian access, but an assessment was not if we were going to be revisiting, do we have a higher priority for one over the other? It is on the assumption that we're maintaining the goals that were adopted in the multimodal plan, which is a balanced approach, and not saying one is higher than the other, but finding that balance.
Okay, I understand, but I guess I feel it's hard to find that balance when I'm only presented with truck data and then historically have to go back and no, it's fine. I just wanted to make that point. It's not you, it's society.
Council, any further questions? All right. Madam Clerk, is there anyone who would like to comment on this matter from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, hearing none. There's no action here, so thank you for that presentation, Amanda, and don't go anywhere.
You're welcome.
The final item on the agenda is consideration of a construction contract award for the 2022 Main Street Pavement Maintenance Project. I will now yield the floor again to Infrastructure Development Services Manager Amanda Wilson. Director, sorry.
Thank you. So item 11A, as the mayor just mentioned, is Main Street Maintenance Project. The map in front of you is reflecting the location. It would be along Main Street between Forest Avenue and Ruth Avenue, including portions of Ruth Avenue. The total of 760 feet on Main and 165 on Ruth. That would be a full width pavement rehabilitation. It does not include, this project does not include any sidewalk or drainage improvements or curbing. It's strictly just a sidewalk or a pavement replacement project. That said, I do think it's important to note Main Street is included on our pedestrian priority network system, and it is slated for future improvements for pedestrians, especially given that proximity to the senior center as well, which is not part of this project. Why Main Street? We included some photos to assist in explaining the why. Luckily, it rained for us, so the potholes are highlighted by the water. And just noting that Main Street is a collector, the existing condition of the pavement is beyond its useful life. Depending on where you're at along that stretch, the pavement condition, which is the PCI reference there, is 32 or 44, which is very, very poor or failing. Basically, it's beyond being able to patch. And then also the other aspect that plays into why Main Street is just timely implementation. There are no utility replacements slated for this section that we need to get done before we do the pavement. And there's really minimal design when we're talking about just strictly a pavement replacement project. So we're able to deliver it much quicker. This process was done through a semi-formal bid process. We solicited 3 bids and 2 responded. The lowest responsible bidder was Woods Crushing and Hauling for $137,597. That is a unit price contract, not a lump sum, meaning we measure actual quantities. And then the next steps, pending any council approval to award, would be we would notify the residents, get a schedule honed in with the contractor, and get the project completed by September 16th of this year. During construction, the residents and the community can expect a 7-day full closure of that area, but we'd still maintain access to the local residents. And so tonight we are asking that you consider staff's recommendation to award a contract to Woods Crushing and Hauling for the 2022 Main Street Pavement Maintenance Project.
Great, thank you, Amanda. Any questions? Council? No? Madam Clerk, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the 2022 Main Street Pavement Maintenance Project Construction Contract Award. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Welker.
Yes.
Contract is awarded. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.